Welcome back. We've had Wednesday afternoon in the wrong 10 seconds. Charlie got a bit desperate after a tough day at his supermarket job, and 14-year-old Phoebe filmed him, but hasn't shown anyone yet. This is chapter 3. This is Lydia on Wednesday evening. What's happening tonight then? The agency nurse took the seat next to Lydia. This one was familiar, she'd been here before. Hardly surprising with the staff shortages at Robins Hill Nursing Home. All quiet on the 3rd floor. Lydia hefted the binder of medical charts and care plans across the nurses' station. Nearly everyone's ready for bed. Not Mr. Harrow. Constance glared over the desk rim. The night carers won't be happy. The agency nurse frowned. I recognize that name. Severe dementia, frequently violent? Mr. Harrow's son visits on Wednesdays. He wouldn't have been happy to turn up a bit late and see his father in bed already. As it turns out, though, he was unable to make it today. Lydia fingered her phone in her uniform's pocket. Constance jabbed the nurse's station with a neatly manicured index finger. It doesn't hurt anyone to see their relatives tucked up comfortably in bed. These are elderly, infirm, they're fully grown adults. Lydia trudged around the nurse's station without disguising her weariness. Constance, it's fine if they want to stay up past 4 in the afternoon. It's 7 at night now, and you spent half an hour coddling Alice. We don't have time for that. It's cruel to let her expect it. I got her to drink a lot more protein shake than she normally has. As the nurse in charge, I believe that's worthwhile. Lydia headed towards Eddie Harrow's room, knees shaking. Senior in ranking though she was, she couldn't always summon the courage to clash with Constance. Their manager didn't help, because the more brutally efficient a care assistant was, the fewer of them had to be used and paid. If only. Lydia pictured Constance bundled into a hospital bed, forced to eat a cold supper there with covers up to her sharp chin. No, it was too harsh. Who knew what Constance had already suffered in her distant South African childhood? But if she were denounced, perhaps shamed for her attitude toward the Robins Hill residents, then again, humiliation was also a terrible thing to wish on anybody, and Lydia knew it. She'd been to secondary school. She took a deep, steadying breath. The corridor lights were dimmed according to management orders to save on electricity. An expectant hush, coupled with the artificial-looking attempts to induce sleepiness, made the nursing home at evening time resemble an overnight flight. They all barreled toward the same destination, somehow a calming thought. Lydia entered Mr. Harrow's room with a quick knock on his doorframe. He reclined in his waterproofed armchair. In his lap, a plastic plate held sandwich crusts from supper. Mr. Harrow? Lydia sat on the edge of his bed. He glanced up, his 3-fingered hand over his eyes. Who the hell are you? She'd been in just half an hour ago, gave him his night tablets, and he swore at her. I'm Lydia, the nurse. I've got a message from your son. She showed him the screen of her phone. He says he couldn't visit today because of a family emergency. What? Who? Mr. Harrow shifted his legs, raising his knees a few centimeters. It was the most he could move, but he'd forgotten. The leftover crusts slid toward his thighs. Get this off me. She cleared the plate away. Of course, sir. I'm sorry it was bothering you. Someone will be along shortly to get you into bed. I don't want to get into bed. I want to bloody go home. To your son? To Paul? Her knuckles whitened on the plate rim. Don't be daft. I have a good store of cider in the barn. Mr. Harrow fumbled with his remaining tousle of white hair and thrashed his legs again. Got to get my damn cider. I see. Good night, Mr. Harrow. Lydia straightened his framed Burma star on the chest of drawers, then made her way to the sitting room. Dressing-gowned, the most able residents sat in armchairs there. Matt, the second carer on duty, made them hot cocoa and put Countryfile on the telly. Is everyone comfortable? Lydia asked, and they murmured affirmation. Lottie grasped Lydia's hand, her glasses glinting under the faux brass lamps. Are you going home now, dear? Yes, I'll be back for the weekend. Ethel put her cup down and leaned forward. Is the other woman leaving too? Lydia nodded vigorous assurance. The movement echoed deep in her chest, clanging against the weighty sensation that she couldn't help these people she adored any more than they could help her. Sleep well, everyone. She kissed Lottie's cheek and waved to Ronald over his newspaper. Then Lydia darted behind Matt, down the stairs to the car park before her feelings rent her apart. It was a cloudy evening, following a not overly warm day, a refreshing chill after her 12-hour shift. Constance clamoured after them. And why do fully grown adults need hot chocolate and goodnight kisses? Lydia whirled around. This is their home. If they want the best of both worlds, they deserve it, especially at the prices they pay for private care. Small compensation for the times we're too busy, so they have to wait for the commode, added Matt, fishing out a cigarette. I don't care what they pay and what they want. Constance planted herself by the slug-eaten hosta bordering the car park. They are spoiled. I'm sorry you think so. When she was young, Lydia spent hours sitting in her little fireside chair at her parents' pub, writing stories. One saga told of a hart, represented by a fresh pink sticker on every page, who visited a zoo, but was devastated to see the animals caged. Arguing with Constance made Lydia feel like that pink sticker. She checked her phone for online messages. As Constance marched away, Matt scratched his hairless head, cigarette between his fingers. This woman is worse for my blood pressure than these smokes are. It's over now. Lydia's finger swiped over the keypad. Are you okay? She typed. Yes, best not to get into it. Matt yawned loudly and stretched. Will you see that boyfriend of yours on your day off? I'm just finding out now, murmured Lydia. Bring him to the pub with us tomorrow night. Lydia eyed the road sloping from the nursing home, lined by brick semi-detached homes with Tudor-style features. Down the hill, the nice houses were absorbed into the city, dissolving in a sea of drab rendering and flat roofs. Probably not. For a year you've talked about this Paul fellow. As Anna says, he sounds so perfect. Must be your embarrassment of us that stops you introducing him. Matthias, it isn't, I promise. Lydia smiled. And it had been 2 years, not just one. Her phone burred, nuzzling in her hand like a live creature. Bit of a crisis this afternoon, he'd messaged her. Shiana's new puppy disappeared outside Fairford's. Guess I'll leave you to it and catch my bus, as you English say. I shall pounce as soon as it appears. Matt ground his cigarette butt into the ashtray by the staff door. See you. Sorry, I'd give you a ride, but I need to visit my parents. Lydia headed for her Ford Fiesta, thumb skating over her keypad. She typed, My dad works at Fairford's. I'll check if he knows anything. She waited in her parked car for Paul's answer, her windows down. The cluttered Fiesta, Mabel, smelled of takeaway Indian food and cat litter, bought in bulk, a suitable vehicle for a semi-disillusioned nurse involved with a married man. Lydia released her hair from its bun and leaned back against the headrest. When she closed her eyes, she saw her childhood illustrations of stick-legged lions and zebras, glum in their cages. The phone trembled on the passenger seat. If you don't mind, Paul's message said, it's worth a try. Of course. Is everyone quite upset there? Shiana's taking it very personally. Deb on the warpath, both seeking solace in social media, rallying the Facebook faithful. I'm sure it will get sorted. Lydia turned on her pink CD, putting work behind her. Hopefully. Thank you, Angel. Lydia smiled again and texted back. I'll get back to you soon. Love you. Her parents' bungalow slotted into a lifeless cul-de-sac, barely looked bigger than the van parked in front. Lydia let herself in. Her dad listened to Bob Dylan while he washed up. Her mum was parked at the table which separated the kitchen end from the lounge end of the room. Liddy lady. Her father looked up from the sink. Have you just come from work? Have some dinner. I made risotto tonight. He nodded at a Tupperware tub placed squarely on the counter, its contents cooling. Thanks, Dad. I'm not hungry yet. Lydia folded herself into a seat next to the wheelchair. Her mother half smiled and hummed a low salutation. Her t-shirt was splotched where risotto must have fallen when she was fed and wouldn't completely wipe away, although Charlie would undoubtedly have tried. Lydia grasped her mother's left hand, the one with some feeling remaining. "How's your day been?" "I think it's been okay. I got called in at the last minute." Charlie approached them, wiping a plate. "So you spent it with our favourite carer, didn't you, my love?" "Miss Supernice?" Lydia recalled. They all had titles, same as the semi-regular customers who used to come to their pub. Charlie would try to remember names, but Harriet laughed them off as Mr. Half-Pint Goatee, Mrs. Brownbread Frizzyhead, and so on. Lydia still harboured childish sketches of them in her apartment, with other artefacts of a bygone era. Charlie returned to the basin. "Gemma, yes, she read to Mum outside from the Guardian's travel section. She even started weeding the vegetables for me. I was falling behind with the rain last week, and extra shifts this week." "Did you see anyone at the shop with a whippet dog?" Lydia asked, studying her mother's face. Harriet had already lost the conversation, it seemed, gazing beyond Lydia. Lydia stared sadly back, though she was speaking to her father. "Apparently one went missing there this afternoon." Charlie put down the teacup he'd been scrubbing. "Where did you hear that?" "Facebook?" Lydia lied and rose from the table to nibble the risotto. Lying made her hungry, or at least it made her want to scoff down anything available. "The girl who owns it and her family are trying to track it down." "Some ridiculously spoilt girl, no doubt." Charlie turned the tap on full force. "Pardon? You used to fancy yourself a hippie, and now you're adopting a 'what dreadful kids these days' attitude?" "I've always been a principled hippie, as your mother will attest. She was the partier. Right, Harriet?" Harriet volunteered an assenting "ah," while her eyes twinkled out the window at the neighbouring bungalow. Face flushed, Charlie pointed a sudsy spatula at Lydia, although that's not to imply that her moral character was ever compromised. Lydia set her teaspoon down. A new fear dropped anchor inside her, adding to the weight already there. "I was only joking." "And I was only observing that not every child, even if they have a sweet face, can be trusted to care for a living creature." He muttered at the dishwasher again, elbow deep in it. "I'm sure Ginger will find her way back if she wants to." When he'd rung to tell Lydia about Harriet's stroke, Charlie had babbled like this. "She was cleaning the guest rooms. I assumed she made quick work of them. You know how speedy she is. And then went to the river or something. I was so busy myself, serving lunches." The doctors reckoned 5 hours passed before Harriet was found. They could save her life, but little else. "What happened, Dad?" Lydia gripped the vinyl worktop. His hands in their marigold gloves went limp in the murky water. "I thought the dog would be better off elsewhere. Free. I sort of encouraged her to go, clattered some trolleys in her direction." "What? Right outside the shop? Does Fairford have CCTV? For another moment he was quiet, though Harriet seemed more alert. Lydia was sure her mother knew, still, when they needed her most, despite brain damage. And Harriet's eyes were wide and ready to forgive. Valuable as that was in this bungalow, if there was video coverage of whatever Charlie had done, Lydia couldn't get her head round it. The acceptance of one person would mean next to nothing. "The CCTV is broken." Charlie looked up at last. "That's irrelevant, though, isn't it? If the family is looking for the dog, I owe them an apology and an explanation." "What's your explanation? The girl is so unpleasant you convinced her dog to run off?" "They should know how her behaviour affects people when she's unleashed on the general populace. They're acquaintances of yours? You could come with me." Lydia's heart seized at the thought of confronting the fierce woman and her daughter, and the alarmed, betrayed look in Paul's blue eyes. "Dad, no. Come on. You know what people are like. They wouldn't be in the wrong. You would, because they're blonde and local and, well, in a sense, you stole their dog." Harriet moaned her disapproval, of Lydia's harsh words, no doubt, rather than of Charlie's actions. But she was right. Charlie was no thief, nothing like it. Lydia sat beside her mother again, putting her arm around her. Charlie insisted, "I set that dog free. I heard them talking in the shop, saying nasty things they'd make her do. Look, I work hard all the time. I do everything right for everyone. If I did something wrong, it was just a random lapse of judgment." He stood before them, marigold rubber-gloved hands on his hips. plaid collared shirt tucked into his trousers, glasses sparkling, mouth set firm. The world's most meticulous hippie. Lydia had long seen him as a paradox. Charlie believed in harmony but hoped it wouldn't be messy. Believed in equality but fought to distinguish himself. Believed in love but assumed he must toil for it. Come to think of it, the captive lion she'd drawn in her childhood zoo story looked a bit like him. I know, Dad. Leaning on her mother's shoulder, Lydia reached for her father's hand as well. Forget the whole thing, okay? Let's play cards. Mum, don't try and cheat. We're keeping our eyes on you. That's the end of chapter 3. I'm going to take a little break before I upload a few more chapters for you later this week. Thanks very much.